Okay, good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Supply Unchained podcast. Today, we are honored to have Brittain Ladd, probably the most recognizable supply chain analyst in the world. I'm your host, Ali Raza, and I look forward to hosting Brittain Ladd and talking about a lot of things as we walk into Manifest in a couple of days. So, hey, good morning, Brittain. Thank you so much for making the time. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. It's always fun to have these podcasts with you and speak with you, Ollie. So definitely, thank you for having me back.
Absolutely, Britton. So we have a lot to cover. So tell me what's going on with you in 2026. And I guess before we start that, let's maybe start with who is Brittain Ladd, right? How did you get started? How do you know so much about so many different industries? Why are you the guy that people call to say, hey, what's really going on in the ecosystem?
Well, I began my career in the Marines. I served in the Marine Corps for 6 years. After I joined them, after I was discharged from the Marines, I was a tank crewman. Re-enlisted, went to the infantry. Ended up getting injured in a training accident. Got medically discharged after 6 years. And went to college, earned a bachelor's, went on to earn three master's degrees. And along the way, I worked at Dell and I worked at Michael Stores and I did projects for several companies, got recruited by Deloitte, got recruited by Capgemini. And so they took me globally. And I completed projects globally, Saudi Arabia with Saudi Aramco, Germany with DHL, China with Nike. So I basically have lived and worked globally. And over the years, one of the things that I started to do was just share my opinion. And I started to write research reports. And as I earned my third master's, I should say, I wrote a report on the global grocery industry. And in 2013, I wrote the report. And I had the good sense to put this comment. I believe Amazon will never become a major player in grocery without owning physical stores or leveraging some type of automated micro fulfillment. And I said, I believe Amazon should acquire Whole Foods. And I wrote that report. I sent it to the executives at Amazon at the time, and they laughed and they said I was an idiot. And they said, under no circumstances would we ever do that. And several senior executives said, look, Brittain, it's not a bad report, but we really think you should take out anything related to Amazon because I think it's going to be laughed at in the coming years. And I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. I didn't remove anything because I knew I was right. So when Amazon acquired Whole Foods in 2017, I absolutely had called that first, and I'd recommended that. And so that kind of put me on the map. The New York Times profiled me, several other nationwide publications profiled me. I was on CNN, I was on Fox News. And over the years, I started to write more. In 2019, I wrote an article where I said Walmart and Microsoft should partner to acquire TikTok. The executives from Walmart and Microsoft publicly said that will never happen. They disputed it. 1 year later, in August of 2020, Microsoft and Walmart partnered to try and acquire TikTok, but they waited too long. And I have multiple examples of where I've been able to predict things. The thing that really set me up for success, frankly, was when Nike CEO John Donahoe partnered with Bain on a direct-to-customer strategy. And after that strategy became public, I wrote a report and I said, this is guaranteed to fail. And I said, all this strategy will do is two things. Number one, it's going to kill Nike sales. And number two, it's going to make all of Nike's competitors stronger. Because once a retailer loses shelf space because a customer pulls out product, and in this case, Nike pulled their shoes out of the retail stores, they have to fill that space up with something that's similar. When you pull out shoes, you're not going to replace it with bottles of syrup. And so I wrote that I said, the only thing that's going to happen is these retailers are going to put Nike's customer shoes on the shelves, and it's absolutely going to increase the sales of those competitors of Nike and make those competitors stronger and weaken Nike. And I said, this strategy will last maybe 1 to 2 years. It lasted about 14 months and they fired the CEO. And so since that time, what I've been doing globally is I work with companies that have relationships with consulting firms, or they put projects in place themselves, or they buy a lot of technology from Google and other companies, and they own it, but they don't know what to do with it. or they own it and they have a consulting firm saying this is what you should be doing. And so they're not sure who to believe. And so I come in and I work with these companies. I don't work for any technology companies. I don't work for any consulting firms. I'm 100% independent. So I have no problem saying the facts. I have no problem saying what I believe is correct. And that is really what I think helps, having that independent voice. There are many other people who do this. I'm not saying you have to have me do it, but it's something that I've been successful at. The other thing that I would bring up is in 2017, Kroger recruited me from Amazon, and I outlined a strategy for Kroger related to micro fulfillment, related to Ocado Technologies. I warned Kroger if they started with Ocado, they would fail. They needed to start with micro fulfillment. I estimated that between 2024 to 2025 is when the project would fail if they started with Ocado. And in 2025, the interim CEO, Ron Sargent of Kroger, announces they've shut down multiple Ocado facilities. And now what they're doing is going to micro fulfillment. And so my strategy that I outlined in 2017 became a reality in 2025. I was 100% accurate. And what I find is the harder I work, the more accurate I am. And so all I do, frankly, on a daily basis, on the weekends and evenings, is I do research, and I'm constantly reading things, and then I write about it and I form opinions about it. And that's why I've been able to work globally across really multiple industries. So at a high level, that's who I am. That's what I do. As far as 2026, the big thing is certainly AI. There's a lot of questions about AI. I think a lot of companies, frankly, have made mistakes, and that they just went out and they bought everything. They own all this technology. They own all this AI related technology, and they don't know what to do with it. So they own it, but they don't know what to do with it. They have consulting firms that they paid millions of dollars to come in, and the consulting firms say, this is what you should be doing. But these companies don't know what the truth is, and they honestly don't know how to install these things, and they really don't even know where to begin. And frankly, they don't even know what's all this AI really about. And so I think we're going to see multiple failures at very large companies, even small to mid-sized companies, because they don't really know what to do. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of negative press releases from companies saying this didn't work or that didn't work. And my advice to them is, you know what, instead of doing something wrong, bring someone in. There's plenty of people out there you can bring in who could be independent and help you with that. But don't think you have to partner with OpenAI or Google on things. If you're not confident in those individuals, find someone who can come in and who can really be dedicated to this. And a phrase I always use is this: you have to bring in someone who takes your success personally. And that's one of the other things that I've been recognized for, is that if I'm doing something for someone, I'm going to make it work. I'll be 100% honest. And I'd rather we cancel something versus moving forward with something that will fail. So I think at a high level in 2026, there's going to be an awful lot of things related to AI, but it's mostly going to be companies just trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, super. And so, and that's why I wanted to make this a LinkedIn live event. So for those of you joining in live, we have turned this into a Q&A session. So please keep the comments coming in. We'll look at them as we speak. And hopefully this has given you a background on who Brittain Ladd is, if you haven't been following him on LinkedIn and other channels for many, many years. So yeah, Brittain, on that note, right, agentic AI, talk to me about why this is happening, right? Is this I call it throughput, you call it velocity. Like, is this because we need to speed things up, or what's really going on with the need for AI in the supply chain space?
So it's really quite fascinating. When I first started writing about this in 2018, 2020, and so forth, I always use this phrase: the biggest impact of AI on any company is the acceleration of velocity. And what that means is end to end across an enterprise, a company's going to be able to do things faster, design products faster, come to market faster with products. They're going to be able to receive orders faster, and leveraging agentic AI in milliseconds, they're going to be able to process those orders. But here's where they run into the brick wall. Every company out there, every company that's listening to me right now, every company that basically is going to watch this podcast in the future, all of them are leveraging supply chains that were designed for another era. The logistics they're using was designed for another era. And that's an era when agentic AI didn't even exist. And so you have 20th century supply chains really trying to be brute forced. Companies are trying to brute force these supply chains to be able to execute, and they're not going to be able to do that. And so what I've always put my focus on, and just a reminder for people who don't know, my background's very heavy in supply chain logistics. One of my masters is a Master of Science in Supply Chain Management from Penn State. And so I look at what AI is all about. And the argument I make is that your supply chain, your logistics must execute at speeds never before achieved. And the only way you do that is redefining your supply chain and re-engineering your supply chain, because trucks aren't going any faster, planes aren't going any faster, trains don't move faster. Your warehouse really isn't fulfilling orders that much faster, no matter what robotics you have. The robotics you had in 2025 are the robotics you have today. So if you leverage agentic AI, your robots aren't moving faster. So what happens is you have the ability to process data, process an order, but your ability to execute is the same today as it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago or a year ago. And so the thing that I write about, the thing I talk about is you have to step back and say, in order for me to speed up my supply chain, I really need to design a supply chain where I have basically smaller supply chains that I can execute from, because that's how I speed it up, is having multiple networks, logistic networks, but I make them smaller. That's where I leverage micro fulfillment centers. A lot of people don't know what those are about. I've installed them multiple times. I know all of the technology related to those. Ali, you certainly know a lot about MFCs as well. So MFCs are very important. But the big thing that I want everyone listening to this to really understand is where you want to be thinking and put your focus is on full self-driving vehicles. And having the ability at your warehouses, your retail stores, your parts supply depots, even if you're in the military, you want it to be where you have the ability to actually engage with autonomous vehicles that can be dispatched from an owner who owns a Tesla or a Waymo or whatever. And if you're a grocery retailer, you need to be able to interact with that full self-driving vehicle that drives itself to your store. You put the product in the trunk, and then while that vehicle is driving back, it may go to multiple restaurants and pick up orders, go deliver them to customers, and then drive itself back to the owner's home. That is absolutely going to fundamentally change logistics as it exists. And that's not something that's going to happen in, say, 2030. That's something that's going to happen in 2026, a company called AutoLane. I think AutoLane is the single most, I believe AutoLane is the single most valuable company existing today as it relates to logistics, as it relates to AI, because they're the company that's figured out a way to leverage their infrastructure, their technology, to help restaurants and retailers, automotive parts dealerships, the U.S. military, to be able to actually engage with these full self-driving vehicles and orchestrate it. And so this is one of the things that I look at Tesla. I think Tesla, people, I think, don't really understand what Tesla's about. But Tesla's going to become one of the single most important companies for making agentic AI a reality, because they have that technology that's going to allow vehicles to be driven autonomously to locations to pick up groceries, to pick up restaurant food and bring it back to the owner. So what does that mean? If you're DoorDash, if you're Uber, you're in big trouble. If you're Grubhub, you're in big trouble. So what I am pushing companies to be thinking about is, don't try and add a new warehouse. Don't try and add a new automation system in your warehouse. Instead, think about, how do I engage with customers that are going to be leveraging FSD? And how do I do that on a much bigger scale? And so that's where bringing in people like Ali or myself or others to help you design the logistics network you need today, and that will take you into the future. and help you basically eliminate the supply chain and logistics that you're leveraging that were designed for another era.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, right? So system architecture is, I think, where we are as an industry right now, which is looking at the overall production systems, products, bringing it all together, right? So since we're talking about automotive, right, there's a lot going on right now with mergers in the ecosystem. Think of Ford and others. So a good use case could be like tier one suppliers, right, in these big supply parks, taking it into the OEM and reducing the big backlog that you typically see going into a large factory. So maybe speak to the legacy players in automotive. What should they be doing? Because obviously Tesla and Waymo have been more aggressive recently in terms of integrating and going full on with the supply chain vision that they have, and Nvidia as well. But what can legacy players be doing in the current environment?
So that's really interesting, and I've spoken about this. I've written about this. One of the things that I wrote about recently, and I got a lot of attention for it. So when you look at the legacy auto parts suppliers out there, the O'Reilly Auto Parts and Advanced Auto and Champion and so forth, and the thing that they do is they all operate their own logistics, their own warehouses. And I look out there, and there are multiple third-party logistics companies, XPO Logistics, DP World. There are many of them out there. And my argument is that they should be going to these auto parts retailers and saying, look, we'll build facilities, or we'll open facilities where we will centralize all of your parts, and we'll manage all of your logistics 100%, store replenishment, fulfilling orders direct to customers, and so forth. So you as the retailer focus 100% on retail. And that alone would significantly change the aftermarket, the parts aftermarket industry in the United States. The other thing that I've written about is that I've probably been the most critical individual for Ford and GM, Stellantis, and others on going into electric vehicles. I wrote 5 years ago that I not only thought it would fail, but I guaranteed that it would fail, because these companies were building vehicles that nobody wanted. Nobody wants EVs in the United States from these companies because they don't know how to build them. Their EVs are actually quite poor. And Ford just had a write-down of $20 billion. And I wrote in 2023 that really what Ford should be doing from a game theory perspective, and people who know me know, I'm considered one of the leading experts in the world at game theory, and applying it to strategy, applying it to companies. And my argument to Ford is that you should not be trying to beat you shouldn't be trying to beat Xiaomi. You shouldn't be trying to beat BYD and the other Chinese EV companies. You should partner with them. And what Ford should do is simply say to BYD and Xiaomi, let's have a joint venture. I'll sell your cars on my lots, my Ford dealerships, but in exchange, you build your cars in the United States. And you pay for the infrastructure development for EVs in the United States out of your pocket. President Trump just signed off on this. He absolutely now has supported and is supporting Ford having discussions with Xiaomi and BYD, and they're happening. Ford is actively in discussions with BYD and Xiaomi about a joint venture in the United States. And I won't be surprised if in 2026, there's an announcement where Ford says, yeah, we're actually going to start selling these cars on our lots. And the reason why that is such a brilliant move for Ford to do is, number one, they stopped burning capital trying to build cars as good as BYD and Xiaomi, something they'll never be able to do. And instead, they dedicate that capital to building the things that they know they're good at. Ford F-150 pickups, the Ford Raptor, my absolute favorite truck on the road. Building muscle cars, the Mustang, building internal combustion engine vehicles, and being able to provide customers with what they want. But here's why I love this strategy the most. And I say this with a degree of humor, so don't take it wrong. But this also kneecaps Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, because she also is burning billions and billions of dollars in capital, thinking that GM is going to build cars as good as BYD and Xiaomi, and they're not. And so if Ford partners with BYD and Xiaomi, they are selling the world's best EVs on their lots. They kneecap Mary Barra. It crushes GM's plans for being able to do anything in EVs because the partnerships will no longer exist. They'll never be able to build cars as good as BYD and Xiaomi. And so from a strategy point of view, Ford now is the de facto EV leader in the United States. They just took out any competition from GM, and now Ford is investing billions into the things that they can return a profit on average of $10,000 per vehicle versus losing up to $15,000 on vehicles they sold, which is what they were losing with EVs. So I think we're going to see a lot of transitioning out of Detroit, out of the automotive companies, because it's time they start thinking from a game theory perspective and stop banging their head against the wall. And this is just something that by doing that, it also has a massive impact on the supply chain, on manufacturing in the United States, on logistics in the United States. There's a ripple effect of other companies that will be moving here and opening up factories. So from an economic perspective, the strategy I just outlined, frankly, is the best thing that we could hope for.
Yeah, speaking of game theory, do you think this is just a classic case of prisoner's dilemma, or is this something greater than that?
So that's interesting. A lot of people will bring up the prisoner's dilemma. And to an extent, that's true. But really what it is that it's changing the game. It's basically acting in a way that's reverse of what your competitor would think. So BYD and Xiaomi love watching Ford and GM waste billions of dollars on EVs. They love it because it's draining their biggest competitors or huge competitors of capital. And it's making them focus on a strategy that's a losing strategy. No matter how much capital Ford and GM put into EVs, they will continually lose money. They will never be able to catch up to BYD and Xiaomi. And so in a game theory perspective, by saying, I want to partner with you, I now have stopped doing the things that weakened me against you. And instead, I've now aligned myself with you. I'm going to basically leverage the things that make you guys such a great company, BYD and Xiaomi. I'm going to leverage everything you do to make me successful. But now I'm going to make you burn capital because you have to build your cars here in the US, which means any new factories, you build them. The setting up the supplier routes, the supplier facilities and everything, you have to pay for that. You have to have this cost structure on your books, not mine. And you also have to basically build the infrastructure for EVs in the US. You're paying for that. So now my cash burn rate is Ford GM significantly decreased. The cash burn rate for BYD and Xiaomi significantly increases. So I actually, from a game theory perspective, am in a better position because I'm doing the reverse of what you ever thought would happen. And there are many examples of that. Look at what Amazon is doing. Amazon's going to open up a supercenter. And that's not something that people thought Amazon would ever do. I actually broke that story in 2025 that Amazon was going to do that. What people don't understand is Amazon is opening up that supercenter not because they want to open up a lot of them. They're not going to compete against Walmart. Walmart has nearly 5,000 stores in the US. Amazon is opening up that supercenter because they're going to perfect the use of micro-fulfillment centers inside that store. 50,000 square feet of that 230,000 square foot store is a micro-fulfillment center. And Amazon is going to perfect everything about that. They're going to install an auto store. Amazon has some technology they're going to put in there, but Amazon's perfecting that micro-fulfillment center. And that's what Amazon will be building and opening going forward. I wrote several years ago that the way for Amazon to compete against Walmart isn't to open up physical grocery stores. It's to open up 500 to 1,000 automated micro-fulfillment centers that do only one thing: fulfill groceries using automation. But they open up these automated micro-fulfillment centers to receive full self-driving vehicles. So this thing can operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, fulfilling orders. Autonomous vehicles can pull up, but then also Amazon can leverage their vehicles to make deliveries. Now, I recently broke a story about the fact that Amazon has their drivers wearing smart glasses. And the purpose of the smart glasses, according to Amazon, is, well, it helps our drivers better see what's going on in the back of the van, and they don't have to use their phone to like call and try and check packages or something like that. And I knew that was a lie. What Amazon is doing is that those glasses are capturing every single thing that the driver of that Rivian van does. In the back of the van, it captures everything the driver does driving to a home. It captures everything the driver does when it goes in the back of the van to pick up a package and walk it to a house. And the thing we have to remember is a lot of time these homes are receiving packages multiple times a week or multiple times a month. And so these glasses are capturing 100% of that data. And the reason why is because they're going to use it to train humanoid robots to actually be in the vans. And they're the ones who are going to be picking up the packages. And they're leveraging what's been captured by the glasses. And they're going to be basically directed and following, this is how I walk up to this house. This is how I open the gate. This is how I walk on the porch and put the package down. This is 100% true. Amazon was not very happy that I broke this story. And a lot of people from Amazon reached out to me, but they couldn't deny it. And so when we think again of logistics and supply chain, or if I'm a CEO of a company that basically is dependent upon making deliveries, I need to be thinking of, do I have the right strategy? So let's look at Instacart. Instacart has made a terrible decision and not changing their business model. They have not opened up their own facilities where they can fulfill online orders for grocery retailers. Instacart could say to grocery retailers, I'm not going to fulfill from your stores. I'll fulfill from my facilities, and I'll charge you a transaction fee for every online order. The groceries will be delivered to my facilities. I'll fulfill using the groceries in the facility, and then I'll deliver to your customer. I charge you a fee for that. It would simplify the grocery process, the grocery fulfillment process, much better. It'd be a much better process, and it would significantly increase Instacart's valuation. I used to be an advisor to Instacart. I was an advisor to them for a year. And I made the argument to Instacart that I said, what you really should do is cancel all of your customer relationships. And you should just open your own facilities and become your own grocery retailer. And you should just sell groceries direct to your customers and fulfill to your customers only. And don't fulfill orders for any other grocery retailer. That, again, would be a major move from a game theory perspective, because it changes what Instacart's always been about. And now grocery retailers can't react to it. And so whenever I'm working with a company on their strategy, and I'm working with multiple companies now on strategy, I'm always looking at, how do we do things different? How do we make decisions that absolutely will shock their industry, shock their competitors? But again, the main thing is this: how do we leverage their supply chain and logistics to enable growth? And that's something that I've stated over and over, is that the purpose of a supply chain is to do one thing: enable growth. And so no matter what companies are listening to me, your success for growth depends on your supply chain. If you're a fighter tactical wing in the Air Force, or you're a Marine Corps unit, your ability to execute really is dependent upon your supply chain and logistics. And you need to be thinking of, what things can I be introducing in my supply chain that are available today or will be available, so I kill off my old, slow 20th century supply chain, and now I'm executing at much faster speeds going forward.
Yeah, Brittain, I'm glad you brought up logistics. I think there's almost 100 organizations that are joining from at least 20 different industries: oil and gas, semiconductor, et cetera. So on the topic of logistics, let's take it back maybe 150 years, and let's talk about the rail industry, right? So with everything going on with AI and the automation of robots and cars and stuff, what can the railroad industry be looking at from a Class 1 perspective?
So this may sound strange, but I can assure you, if I'm the CEO of Union Pacific or Norfolk Southern, any of the grocery retail, any of the railroads out there, and I love the rail industry. I think it's one of the most fascinating industries out there. I dearly love railroads. If I'm the CEO of one of those companies, I'm making one phone call. I'm calling Elon Musk, and I'm saying, I want a partnership with SpaceX, and I want a partnership with XAI, and I want a partnership with Tesla, and I want you to help me make my railroad the most advanced AI company, basically in logistics. in anything related to transportation. And the reason why I say that is that the railroads are so far behind other industries, not because they don't have great people. I've met brilliant people who work in rail companies, but because of regulations and historical restraint, the rail industry really is disjointed. It's really not very advanced. And so instead of just saying, well, we're going to have a merger between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern, or any other possible acquisitions out there, mergers, what I think they really should be doing is saying, wait a minute, how do we partner with someone who has significant capabilities above we do? And certainly SpaceX and XAI is a company that does that, Tesla. And how do we actually design our railroad to execute like they do and leverage data like they do and be able to leverage the satellite capabilities that they have? And how do we now offer an ability to where we have full self-driving vehicles because we partner with Tesla. We have a fleet of them. And so not only, and we're leveraging the Tesla semi-truck, which is also autonomous. And so we now have an end-to-end integrated railroad capability, but we're basically re-engineering, we're redesigning, we're rethinking, how do we really leverage this railroad? How do we actually become the thought leader? And we're changing how long-haul trucking is done and how just trucking is done, period. And we're introducing new technology, new business models, new ways of tracking, but we're able to accelerate things that we do through very strategic partnerships. So that's one of the things I would be doing. There are other things, but I think the main thing is that if they do it right, railroads, someone like Union Pacific, Norfolk Southern, if they do combine, they literally can be one of the primary drivers of change in logistics, because now I'm leveraging rail in a much different way. I'll give you an example. I designed this when I worked for Amazon. I designed that there was a way to use rail cars loaded with drones, and that these drones actually could be making deliveries by parking the rail car, near downtown areas, and the drones basically actually originate from there, and they replenish from the rail car itself. And it turned out that we simulated it, and we're like, wow, this actually would work. So there's fascinating things that these railroad companies can do, but the main thing is that I think they need to say, we're not a railroad. We are truly a leading logistics company. We're the thought leaders in logistics. And this is how we're going to change how logistics is done in the United States, because we're going to play such an integral role now. And that's why I absolutely 100% support the mergers that are taking place out there, or that want to take place out there, because I believe rail has been woefully underutilized over the years. And I think they have just an incredible future.
Yeah, they're basically the cardiovascular system of the country, and not many people realize that, right? I mean, they should be operating like arteries, but they operate more like veins. So, good thing is we're just having some questions come in, Brittain. So I'm just going to shift it to some of the.
Oh, absolutely. I'll ask, and everyone on the phone, everybody listening, feel free to ask anything. There's no question off limits. If I don't know it, I'll just simply say I don't know it, and then you can reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I'll answer it for you independently if I have to.
Yeah. So the first question is, as FSD becomes more prevalent, is there data on the % of accidents that happen across EV makers globally, and what resolution steps need to be put in place to resolve those timely to keep goods cargo moving? And I guess that, that there's a difference between highways and tier 1 supplier parks that are on a fixed path. So maybe just speak to that, Brittain, taking back about 10 minutes.
So the latest data that I read, and there's not a lot of it out there, but I believe the accident ratio is 1 accident for every 25,000 trips that are actually made by an FSD. And that accident is an accident that actually results in either bodily injury or physical damage to a vehicle or multiple vehicles. It's 1 for every 25,000 movements. So I don't know how accurate that data is. But here's the thing. There is no way you're going to be able to leverage full self-driving vehicles and it's accident-free. I don't envision a future where that's going to happen for decades. But what is factual is that there are much fewer accidents when you use FSD than when you rely on people to drive to the store themselves, pick up their own vehicles, or you rely on a third party like DoorDash or Instacart or Uber Eats to pick up and make the delivery. So from a safety perspective, and my first job out of college, I was a risk manager and I investigated accidents for trucking companies. So from my perspective, I'd much rather be leveraging an autonomous full self-driving vehicle and set up my network to be leveraging that as much as possible through AutoLane versus I'm going to rely on DoorDash or Uber Eats or someone else, a gig worker, to pick up product and then make that delivery. So rest assured that the technology is improving, and that from a safety perspective, I think this is incredibly manageable, and I think it's going to be absolutely the safest option based on what I'm seeing in advances in the technology.
Thanks, Brittain. So the next question on that same note is, how can Amazon implement AutoStore? Have they, via John Schechter, officially become a systems integrator in the eyes of the Norwegians?
So that's a great one. I pushed Amazon for 3 years just to give AutoStore a try. And finally, Amazon piloted an AutoStore. And Amazon has a relationship with AutoStore. For those of you who don't know, Amazon actually tried to acquire AutoStore in 2024. I don't know if Amazon will publicly admit that, but they actually did. I spoke with members who were part of the discussions. And SoftBank owns a significant portion of AutoStore, and they turned down Amazon. Amazon has partnerships with multiple systems integrators, 2 system integrators. And through them, Amazon has a relationship with AutoStore. And so the fact that Amazon has a relationship with AutoStore is a fact. This is not rumor. Amazon is hiring people. You could go to the Amazon career website and they're hiring people, and they specifically ask for people who have experience with AutoStore. So they're doing that because Amazon's plan, according to what members of the team building the supercenter outside of Chicago told me, is today their plan is to install an AutoStore inside the supercenter. Amazon has built their own technology platform called Orbital. And Orbital is a replacement to what Amazon used to call the LVM, for local vending machine. It was their version of a micro-fulfillment center. It was okay, but Amazon's robotic team said we could do better, so they built Orbital. So they're testing Orbital today. It's not going as well as they thought because, again, it's very challenging technology. So Amazon absolutely has a partnership with AutoStore. John Schechter gave his permission. He's not about to turn down Amazon. Amazon speaks highly internally of AutoStore, and you heard it here first, and I've stated this several times. I won't be surprised if Amazon makes a play to acquire AutoStore if they believe that they're not going to be able to be successful using Orbital as their micro-fulfillment center technology. The other thing that I've spoken about is Walmart has a $5 billion contract with a company called Symbotic. Symbotic was supposed to start installing micro-fulfillment centers inside Walmart stores in 2026. Symbotic has a contract to install 600. Rick Cohen, the CEO of Symbotic, stated just a few days ago, we're still in the prototyping phase for what they call Sim Micro, their version of a micro-fulfillment center. According to Rick, they believe they may only be able to install 2 prototypes at Walmart in 2026. From a game theory perspective, why does this matter? Because now Amazon has an ability to accelerate opening up 500 to 1,000 micro-fulfillment centers, standalone micro-fulfillment centers around the United States. They can open them close to Walmart stores within cities where Walmart has a lot of stores. And now Amazon has been given an opening. And if they're smart, they will exploit that. The way Amazon would exploit that is by opening up as many MFCs with an AutoStore as possible. But then there's the wild card. From a pure technology point of view, the company that makes the best MFCs, the best grocery fulfillment product is really Ocado. Now, Ocado's gotten some bad press. That's not because their technology's bad. It's because Ocado simply didn't push hard enough to ensure that the right strategy was being used. And frankly, Ocado's salespeople foolishly pushed to sell their customer fulfillment center technology to companies that really didn't require it in areas where Kroger operates and in Canada where areas of where Loblaws operates. They didn't need to have a CFC. So I also won't be surprised, and I am recommending this, that I think Walmart, from a game theory perspective, should acquire Ocado. And Walmart should basically take Ocado's micro-fulfillment center technology that they've built, and Walmart should start installing that. Or Walmart, through Symbotic, should acquire AutoStore. SoftBank owns a percentage of Symbotic and a percentage of AutoStore. So this would be an acquisition that could be easily done. And what happens is now this leaves Amazon out in the cold. So I'm expecting over just the next few weeks, we're going to see an awful lot of movement related to AutoStore. And I won't be surprised if Amazon acquires AutoStore, or Walmart acquires AutoStore, or Symbotic acquires AutoStore. Just as I won't be surprised to see Symbotic acquire Ocado, or Walmart acquire Ocado, or Amazon may say, I'm acquiring AutoStore, or I'm acquiring Ocado. We know for a fact, again, taking into account agentic AI, supply chains have to execute faster. Logistics has to execute faster. And the way you execute faster is you open up automated facilities as close to your customers as possible. And that really requires automation, micro-fulfillment. There's only a few systems out there on the market that are even worth anything that are worth investing. And so I think this is one of the more interesting spaces, but I get a lot of questions about Amazon and AutoStore. I don't have all the particulars of what went on behind the scenes, but yes, 100% Amazon has a relationship with AutoStore, and Amazon has every intention to be installing more AutoStores. Their goal is to replace AutoStore with Orbital, but if they can't make that happen, they have no choice but to stick with AutoStore or Ocado.
Yeah, Brendan, on that note, right, I'm glad that you brought up the concept of being capacity constrained, right? So obviously there's the Costco model where they grow just at the rate that they grow and they're happy. So talk to me about the advantage that Amazon has in terms of creating capacity perspective to say the other competitors in the space. And on that note, maybe it's a good transition to what's in the news a lot these days, data centers, and obviously we're constrained on the capacity side there to get that built up. So how should we be thinking about building capacity in the US, upgrading capacity? Reshoring is obviously a big push from the White House right now. So what's going on with the capacity bottlenecks?
Well, so in the case of Amazon, I'll finish that topic. Amazon, again, they generated $715 billion in revenue in their last quarter. So Amazon has a ton of cash. They can afford to do anything. And so they absolutely are looking at multiple ways of expanding their capacity, building capacity through micro fulfillment centers. One of the things they're looking at is using Rivian vans with a humanoid robot and actually have the vans of just be autonomous and be making deliveries, and the humanoid robot makes a delivery. They'll perfect that. They'll work in the states that will allow that. And eventually, over the next year or two, multiple states will start allowing this technology. So Amazon is not only generating demand through Amazon.com, but they also generate demand through their Prime program. So Amazon generates demand through that. Now Amazon is going to be adjusting their logistics network to take advantage of agentic AI. And what did Amazon announce yesterday that caused their stock to drop? Amazon's investing $200 billion with OpenAI in 2026. And that is for one thing, agentic AI. That is so Amazon becomes the leader in agentic AI, but more importantly, it's that Amazon becomes the leader in the operating model for agentic AI, which is software, which is leveraging the technology through OpenAI, leveraging AWS, but leveraging a logistics network that can execute at speeds never before achieved. And I'm telling you, if you're a company out there listening to me and you're a CEO or a CFO and you're not thinking to yourself, we're in trouble. I highly encourage you to start, because Amazon's changing the game of how business is going to be done. And so companies are going to have to start rethinking. They're going to have to start thinking differently about everything that they do related to logistics, related to supply chain, related to AI. And this is something that they can't wait. They're going to have to really move forward with this. And they're going to have to now figure out, so what do we do to add capacity in our supply chain? Do we partner with a 3PL? Do we own this ourselves? Do we leverage a partnership with AutoStore or with instock.com? Who do we really partner with? They have so many questions that they have to answer, but they need to get started answering them. As far as data centers, I've been very critical of that entire process. I know a lot of people in China. I know members of the team of DeepSeek. The individuals I speak with in China, again, from a game theory perspective, love it. They absolutely are rolling on the floor laughing at the billions and billions of dollars that are being invested in data centers, and China's not doing that. China absolutely is using a completely different model. And so I'm skeptical that there's going to be a payoff from these data centers anywhere near as large as is being estimated. But more importantly, and I've written about this and I stand behind it, in many ways, I think the whole data center topic is a Ponzi scheme. And what I mean is, every few months, someone comes out, whether it's Jensen Huang, my nickname for him is Fonzie, because of his always wearing the uniform. I think he's a good guy, but he's someone that I literally think he's the leader of the pack in trying to create this perception that if you don't invest in data centers, you have no chance of success. And he's always talking about, we're this close to achieving, super intelligence. We're this close to having AI basically be able to replace human thought. And all you need to do is keep investing, and you too can achieve it. And when I look at what Meta's doing, and I look at some of the other companies are doing, they're all throwing billions and billions of dollars at building data centers to achieve something that may not be achievable or not even necessary. And so I'm not convinced a lot of these data centers will ever be built because of their costs. Already there's a report that Jensen Huang's $100 billion contract with OpenAI may never occur. I'm not surprised at that. I wrote that would happen. I think I wrote 6 months ago that contract would never become a reality. So I would tell people, be skeptical of the whole discussion about data centers. Don't be rushing out and investing billions and billions of dollars. Really think this through, really have a good strategy, and look for alternative ways. But now we also have to talk about energy. There's not enough electricity. There's not enough grid to even power these things. And so I think that's another thing that is being overlooked. I really think that this thing has kind of gotten out of control. And I think in 2026, and especially into 2027, we're going to see an awful lot of these projects, I think, get canceled. I think we're going to see alternative ways to be powering AI, powering data centers. And I think we're going to be seeing interesting ideas. One of the things I wrote about that I thought was fascinating is there are billions of devices that exist globally. And many times they sit for hours a day and they're not used, but they all have power. And one of the things I thought was interesting is, why isn't OpenAI or Google simply creating the ability for people to leverage their devices to accumulatively be powered to power a data center? Because it would be the cheapest way to do it. The devices already exist, and those devices already have power. And when you plug in those devices, they're continuously powered. So it's a new way of, I don't need to build a data center for 100 billion. I'm basically just leveraging the combined computing power or electric power from the over 1 billion devices that are out there in the world today. And that's how I'm powering my ability to power a data center or power my AI. So I think this is still very new. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen, but I'm incredibly skeptical about all of this talk about we're investing 200 billion, 100 billion. They're throwing around the number billion the way you and I would throw around, this is a $5. That's $5, I'll do that. That's $10, I would do that. And it's amazing that this has taken on a life of its own. And I think it's just all going to come crashing down. I don't believe this is sustainable.
Brittain, I'm glad that you brought up the energy side of things, right? So, and of course, you worked on Saudi Aramco projects and others. So, one of the things I've seen, at least in the crypto industry, is they've been doing this over the last 4 or 5 years, where like certain companies are tapping into the chip on your phone and obviously your power, and they're basically using it to to mine Bitcoin or whatever their coin is, right? So, I think that industry is already looking at it. So, on that note of energy and critical resources, right? That's another industry that's maybe a little bit more advanced than the railroads, right? How should they be thinking about traditional power, right? So obviously they're oil, gas, crude. This year we've seen a uptick in stocks, right? Especially for services company. They're big on the logistics side. I don't think we've even gone to the freight and the sand hauling and all that stuff, right? So what should they be doing from a 2026 perspective? Should they get excited about this AI boom and bet the farm on it? I've seen it firsthand in 2015, where shale gas was like the biggest thing, and then it wasn't, right? So how should oil and gas executives be looking at, or energy executives? I know CERAWeek Week is coming up as well in a couple of weeks. How should they be thinking about supply chains, AI, what they can be doing today, and keeping in mind that even though they have millions and billions of sensors, if their data maturity is not there, then how do they move beyond using AI from like a decision intelligence perspective into, say, the execution layer, right? Which is where a lot of companies are stuck. So your thoughts on that?
I think, again, almost similar to what I stated about the railroads. I think the executives at energy companies honestly need to step back, and they need to, in the military, they oftentimes will call a safety halt if aircraft are crashing or there's problems in a unit. They basically will just have a stand down. And I think that these executives at these energy companies really need to just call a halt to everything that they're working on for a day or 2 days. And I think they honestly need to get into a room and they need to have an honest review about what is it we're doing, and just have someone come in who's independent. I'm not saying hire me or anything like that. Bring in someone independent who can walk through what are they really focused on. Do they have a right understanding of where this is going? Are they understanding the importance on clean data and being able to have data accuracy, so forth, data visibility? And do they have even the right understanding of how do we leverage everything we're doing to create a competitive advantage, to do things that our competitors aren't? And do we have the right strategic partnerships? How many CEOs of an oil or energy company have a partnership with Tesla or SpaceX? Odds are none. I think they absolutely should. And so I'm a supporter of the oil industry. Love it. I absolutely love shale gas, the shale gas industry. I think that's incredible. Anything dealing with power grids transform, I think that's fascinating. I've never been a big supporter of green energy, the wind farms and solar. It has its place, but I have to stick with what matters, and that's oil. I hear the I'm an oil man speech from There Will Be Blood movie in my head, because I truly am. I believe in oil. I see the importance of that. And so these CEOs, I think, need to step back because they've been so slammed with data. There's so much noise around them that what I'm seeing in the industry is I think they're getting distracted. And I think what they're not being able to answer this question is, why do we exist? What is our output? What is our deliverable? What can we do to create a strategic advantage? And I see them grasping at or being attracted to every shiny object out there. And I see this across the industry. I worked with a electricity company, a utility company last year, and I was amazed at everything that they had their hand in, but they couldn't do anything right, and they hadn't installed anything correctly. And so my argument to them was, stop. We have to start all over because you're wasting time, money, and effort on things that will have no value, and it's not strategic to you. And so that, to me, is what these CEOs need to do most of all. They need to just stop, and they need to take a day or two and let's review everything that you're doing, And let's make sure everything you're doing is strategic, and make sure all of the partnerships you have are strategic to you and you're strategic to them. And let's make sure that you understand this is really what you need to be implementing to achieve your goals and to be able to achieve the things about why you even exist as a company. And I think what these CEOs are going to find is they're wasting millions of dollars. They honestly don't have a strategy that makes sense, and that there's a much better way for them to be thinking about their business. Again, oil companies, energy companies can be much more than an oil company and an energy company. They just simply need to understand what else it is that they could be doing. And as I say all the time, crush all assumptions and think big. And that's the thing that I see missing from these CEOs. They're simply thinking about what everyone else is doing. They're not thinking big, and they're not crushing assumptions. And I think it's hurting their companies.
And Brittain, thanks for bringing that up, right? So talk to me about the fear of change, right? So we spoke about this a couple of weeks back when we were discussing some of our 2026 notes, right? So obviously there's smart people at the top, right? And they know what needs to be done. But what is the fear? How do you overcome the fear of doing something new? Obviously some people are, being there 30, 40 years or approaching retirement, other things. So in the age where there's so much change going on, how do you stay relevant, or how do you overcome that fear? Maybe speak more to that, right? So, I mean, there's smart people across all the industries on the call today, but that jump to change, right? Or just where we're at today and where we could be. Why is that so hard for many, many executives, especially the boardrooms, right? That you and I typically speak to.
Well, so let's go back to the Nike example. So imagine you work at Nike, and along comes John Donahoe, CEO, and he says, "Hey, and John used to be the CEO of Bain and Company, and he's like, I have Bain, and Bain is the best, and they're the brightest people in consulting. They're the best and brightest, and they've come up with a strategy called direct to consumer, and we're going to pull all of our product out of all the retail stores that we've had partnerships with for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and we're creating a new strategy, and it's absolutely going to make us the most profitable. We're going to grow, and we're going to change the game of retail. And over the next 14 months, all you see is failure." Now, who do you trust as an executive going forward? Because there are lots of CEOs out there who have relationships with McKinsey, Boston Consulting, Bain, Deloitte, and other consulting firms. And these firms are constantly letting down these companies, but these CEOs still keep doing business with these same firms. And so when I started to work in this business, when I started to basically do consulting, one of the things that I had to address first was being able to speak privately with CEOs, members of the board, CFOs, other senior executives, and getting them to get over their fear of not being able to make a decision. Because there's so much pressure on a lot of executives, they won't make a decision at all. Or they'll only make a decision if there are 5 other people or 10 other people say, yes, we should do that. And so what happens is they all decide to do something, but everything they decide to do was wrong. And so what I do and what others do is that you walk the executives through what the facts are, and you confront them with the fact that they have to be able to make a decision on their own. But this is how you teach them how to do it. And it's amazing how many CEOs over the years don't know how to make a decision, because every decision they make is by groupthink or by group agreement, consensus, I should say. And so what I do is that I lead with facts. I say, this is what the facts are. And again, the advantage I have is I don't work for McKinsey or Bain. I don't make any money if you use them. I don't make any money if you use any consulting company. So I'm independent. I can tell you the truth. And because there's no financial benefit to me for recommending a company do something, CEOs have told me, they're like, well, I was skeptical, but then I talked with you and I learned what you were talking about. And you proved to me that this technology works. And then you put me in contact with people who are using it. And so now I have the confidence that we can design a strategy, we can implement the strategy, and this is how we measure the strategy and make sure that's working. But more importantly, this is how we pivot if we have to. And so the thing that I work on the most is fear, and helping CEOs understand that they have to basically forget a lot of the things they've been told. They have to ignore a lot of the relationships they have, especially if they're with a major consulting firm. And they have to be able to have an understanding of, this is who I am as a CEO. This is what my business is about. This is who my customers are. This is why we exist. And now this is what we need to do to grow. And I walk them through, this is how we're going to achieve that. And again, because I'm not trying to sell them on, we're going to have 50 people here on this project, and now I'm going to have 100 people on this, and this is going to be a system-wide software implementation. I don't do that because it's frankly not needed for the majority of companies out there. What's needed is for that CEO to have a better understanding of, this is what my industry is doing. This is where technology is moving. This is how the economy is progressing. And now this is where I fit into all of this. And this is from a game theory perspective. These are the moves I should be making, and this is how I should make them. So that, to me, is how I do it. But again, there are other people who do this, and they have a completely different methodology than I use.
Yeah, I guess that's the power of an independent analyst, right? Just the ability to be the CEO's friend or the board's friend. Not many people know this, but CEOs and the board actually need friends, right? That's why some of these consulting firms are hired, right, to advocate for their agendas. But to that point, right, there's always a conflict of interest. If you can go with an independent person, again, it's whoever you pick. It's always good to listen to different perspectives to see what's really going on, and obviously look at vendors and look at use cases, etc. But I think that's always been the challenge with a lot of the traditional industries, right? Which is there's groups that are already gone through procurement and vetted, so it's always harder to get like an independent person coming in saying that's how it used to be in the 1960s, but today these are the changes, right? And I think I'm seeing a lot of that in the military. You're former military yourself, right? So speaking on that, I'm getting some more questions, so maybe transition into that. So insightful conversation. Thanks. What do you see as the role of private companies and partnerships in advancing public infrastructure? So we never even got into rail and highways and transit, right? So let's maybe shift to government, right? Obviously, there's all sorts of organizations that need entrepreneurs like yourself, right? You've been both for that matter. What can they be doing, right, to look into 2026 and do better?
Well, it's interesting. I work with startups. A lot of startups will reach out to me. I only work with a couple of them. Some small defense companies have contacted me, some larger ones. Other government agencies have contacted me. And the thing that I really say to all of them is they have to learn how to tell a story. And what I mean by that is they have to identify a problem. They have to identify a solution. And then they have to tell a story about why they are best at solving that problem. Or they need to identify a technology, explain why that technology is valuable, and then they have to be able to tell a story about, this is how you as a customer can leverage this technology to do these things. And this is going to be the value to you. This will be the value to your agency or whatever. And so I'm amazed at how poor of a job so many entrepreneurs and agencies, startups, I'm amazed at how poor of a job they do at telling a story, so that nobody understands what they do. They really don't tell a story that elevates them above everybody else. And they don't really tell a story in a way to where you're excited to say, I want to do business with that company. And so, again, just as I think CEOs should step back, I think a lot of the companies that fall into this category, I think they need to step back and say, wait a minute, do we really even know what we're doing? Do we honestly know what we're doing? Do we honestly know what problem we're trying to solve? Do we honestly know how to solve it? Do we even know who the customers are for this? Are we telling the right story? And I think what they're going to be shocked at is they're not. And that's what they need to work on. They need to work with someone, hire someone who can help them tell a better story, sharpen their focus, sharpen their message, and then be able to also do much better at networking, being able to attend the right events, meet the right people, and be able to convincingly explain to these individuals about why they should do business with them. So that's one of the things that I find is shocking to me is how many small companies, how many entrepreneurs, how many startups, they may have a great product, but they have a lousy message. They have a lousy story and they go nowhere. Again, I think sharpen your message, sharpen your focus, have a better story, and do a much better job of explaining this is why we exist. This is why you should do business. And don't waste time going after business that you'll never win. Only go after business to where you're strategic to them and they're strategic to you. And let me repeat that. I'm amazed at how many companies will go after business, even though that business isn't strategic to them at all. And if you're a startup, the worst thing you can do is get business for business sake. Your first customer better be strategic to you, because if it is, then you can leverage that as a foundation to build on. And then you can be going after more business that's strategic to you. It's more important that you do business with a company that's strategic to you versus you're necessarily strategic to them. You want that balance. And if you do that, they're strategic to me, I'm strategic to them. That's how you grow, and that's how you have a winning formula.
Yeah, and on that note, with public-private partnerships, right? So a four-star general once told me that there's basically got to get three things across, right? Who you are, what you do, and how you do it, and do it quick, right? Because that's the big hey, like this is us, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and that just sets the tone, right? But one of the other things the three-star general basically coached me on was that, hey, what is the what? Bottom line up front, right? Which is what can you do for it? Can you put 50 more planes in the sky? Can you increase sales by 10%? And then they want to see a methodology of like, okay, show me use cases, right? I mean, everybody's pitching that AI is going to change the world, but show me what you've been able to do with AI today. Where are the use cases and the proof? And it's hard, obviously, as a startup just getting started to find those use cases, but you can always anchor on your personal story, right? And I think, Brittain, you spoke to your story really well at the beginning of this podcast, right? And how you have basically been set up to do what you do today, right? And to speak to that and maybe take one more last question, because I know we're coming up on time. This has been a phenomenal session. So talk to me about what you see are the gaps in the ecosystem. What are you working on today to fix that? And your parting thoughts on just what CEOs should be thinking about in 2026 and how to reach out to you. So over to you.
So again, if you're ever interested in communicate with me, you can just reach out to me via LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to contact me. You can call me 469-714-9754. You're more than happy to text me, call me. I don't mind that at all. What I really have to say to CEOs is, again, do you understand why your company exists? Do you truly? Do you understand who your customers are? And are you doing things because it's strategic, or are you doing things because that's what everybody else is talking about and doing? I would rather a CEO be slow in making decisions while everyone around them is making decisions quickly, if the decisions made by that CEO are more strategic to their company and to their customers. And if that CEO truly understands the way we grow is by creating a supply chain that enables our growth. Because again, the purpose of a supply chain is to do one thing, enable growth. And so my argument to CEOs, my recommendation to CEOs is that make sure you're fighting the right battle. Make sure you know exactly what battle you're fighting. Make sure you know what war you're fighting. And make sure you have a strategy, and that the strategy truly is something that's going to be beneficial to you. Pay attention to the pennies. I'm amazed at how many CFOs out there and CEOs out there approve projects that have no ROI, no strategic value. They spend millions of dollars or even billions of dollars, and they receive no benefit at all. And because we're in the phase of AI, I also want all CEOs to understand this. The biggest lie of AI is that it's going to create millions of new jobs and that it's going to spawn new industries. That is 100% false. I've stated from the beginning, AI has no incentive to create jobs that require humans, because humans are the biggest constraint to any process being efficient. You want to have an inefficient process, have humans be involved. That's the perspective of AI. So companies really need to understand that as they implement AI, as they move to be an agentic AI company, they are not going to be creating millions of new jobs. They're not going to be spawning new industries. So you still need a CEO who understands, where's my industry going? Who are my customers? How do I make decisions more quickly? And let me say this one final point. You need to stop being servant leaders. I have people tell me all the time, I'm a servant leader, as if it means something. It doesn't. In the age of AI, you better be a situational leader. You better operate more like the military, and you better be able to make decisions that fast, and you better be able to leverage data in a way that allows you to understand what's really going on in my industry. What are my competitors doing? Now, how do I, leveraging game theory, how do I make moves that they can't? So the day of being a servant leader and, oh my gosh, you're going to talk about how wonderful your employees are, all of that, that's over with. That's done. I noticed that in China several years ago. I'm seeing it at certain companies today. Palantir Technologies, I think, is the epitome of a company that understands. Being a servant leader is absolutely useless. They can execute. They're moving fast. Other companies situated or working with the military can do this. And so for the CEOs out there, whether you want to hear it or not, you have to stop thinking being a servant leader is a good thing. And you need to become much more aggressive in your leadership. And you have to be able to make decisions faster. And you have to think much more strategic. It's not easy to do, but there are people you can bring in to help you do this. And I want all of you to understand, I take your success personally. And there are other people out there who feel the same way I do. So I wish all of you the best. If there's any.
Well, it looks like Bryn dropped off there. So again, thank you. So while we wait, so just to wrap it up on the podcast side. But there you are. Yeah, we lost you for just a
I have
bit.
no idea why that happened. But as I was saying, I wish everybody the best. If there's ever anything I can do to help, I'm more than happy to. If you want to talk, I'm more than happy to talk. But Ali is a fabulous resource that I definitely encourage you to leverage as much as possible. I have tremendous respect for Ali. I have tremendous respect for his company, Throughput AI. And it's just been a pleasure to be on this with you, Ali. And if we want to do this again in a few months or whatever, I'm happy to.
Yeah, super. And so again, thank you for the audience for joining us today. Hopefully, if you have more questions, feel free to add them to the chat. Right, Bryn can look at it after the LinkedIn Live and continue adding these comments to it. And looking forward to seeing some of you at Manifest next week, and hope for you to join the next episode. We're hopefully bringing in someone from the military to speak more on military supply chain. So with that, Bryn, have a good rest of your weekend. Stay safe and stay warm. Take care.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.